The gravy was sta rooting to stick to the bottom of the pot. I scraped the wooden spoon along the enamel, watching the dark brown liquid bubble and reduce. The smell of braised pork, ginger, and anise filled the kitchen, fogging up the windows so that the streetlights outside blurred into soft, orange smudges. It was my 34th birthday, and the house smelled like my mother's house used to smell on a Sunday afternoon. From the dining room, I heard the clink of a fork against a porcelain plate. Mark was setting the table. He always did it the same way, the forks on the left, the knives on the right, the napkins folded into neat little squares. He was a man who believed in order, in the small rituals that made a house feel like a home. I watched him through the doorway for a moment. He was humming under his breath, a tune I didn't recognize, and he had a crease in his forehead that he always got when he was concentrating on something trivial. I smiled and turned back to the stove. On the floor by the refrigerator, Lily was building a castle out of her toy blocks. She was 6, with her father's serious eyes and my stubborn chin. She was stacking the red blocks in a wobbly tower, her tongue poking out of the corner of her mouth in concentration. I reached down and straightened a block for her. Not that one, Mama, she said, pushing my hand away. You're messing it up. Sorry, sweet art, I said. I'll leave the architecture to you. Mark poked his head into the kitchen. Everything under control in here? The table is ready. Almost, I said, stirring the gravy once more. Where's the birthday girl? Right here, Lily said, without looking up from her blocks. I met your mother, Mark said, and he came over and kissed my cheek. His lips were dry and warm. Happy birthday, Megan. Thank you, I said. It feels like just another Thursday. It's not just another Thursday, he said. You're 34. That's a prime number. That's significant. I laughed. If you say so. The doorbell rang. The sound cut through the cozy hum of the kitchen, the bubbling pot, the soft clatter of blocks, the low murmur of the radio playing old jazz in the living room. It was a sharp, insistent ring, not the tentative chime of a neighbor dropping off a casserole. I wiped my hands on my apron and went to answer it. Through the frosted glass of the front door, I could see a familiar silhouette. It was Paul, my brother. He was 10 minutes late, which was typical. I opened the door, a smile already forming on my face. You're late, I said. He didn't smile back. He was holding a manila folder under his arm, pressed against his side like a shield. His jacket was unbuttoned, and his tie was loosened. He looked tired, not the tired of a long day, but the tired of a long week, maybe a long month. His eyes were rimmed with red. Happy birthday, sis, he said, but his voice was flat, rang no rmth. He stepped past me into the hallway, and I caught a whiff of cigarette smoke and stale coffee. He never smoked. At least, he never used it. Are you okay? I asked, closing the door behind him. Fine, he said. Just busy. The business is keeping me on my toes. Mark came out of the dining room, wiping his hands on a dish towel. He clapped Paul on the back with a Rudy familiarity that Paul didn't seem to return. Paul, good to see you. Come on in. Megan's made that pork roast you like. Smells good, Paul said, but his voice was still distant. He held out a small velvet box to me. Here. For you. I took it. It was light, no bigger than my palm. I opened it. Inside, nestled on a bed of white satin, was a silver necklace. It was simple, a thin chain with a small, teardrop-shaped pendant. It was pretty. I looked up at Paul, surprised. He was not a man who gave jewelry. He was a man who gave gifts cards or, on a good year, a bottle of wine he'd picked up at the gas station. Paul, I said, this is beautiful. You didn't have to do this. It's nothing, he said, already turning toward the living room. Just something I saw. I fastened the necklace around my neck. The silver was sealed against my skin. It felt strange, like a piece of armor I hadn't asked for. Mark squeezed my arm. That was nice of him, he whispered. I nodded, but the knot of unease in my stomach had tightened. We moved to the dining room. The table was set with the good china, the plates with the faded blue flowers that had belonged to my grandmother. Mark had lit candles, the unscented kind, because Lily's allergies had been acting up. The room glowed with a soft, warm light. Lily was already in her seat, her block castle forgotten, her eyes fixed on the cake in the center of the table. It was a simple yellow cake with chocolate frosting, my favorite since I was a child. Paul sat across from me. He shrugged off his jacket and draped it over the back of his chair. He didn't look at the cake. He looked at the door, then at his watch, then at the window. Everything all right? I asked, serving him a portion of the pork. Fine, he said again. I told you. Just busy. You look tired, I said. I said I'm fine, Megan, he snapped. His voice was sharper than he'd intended, and he winced. Sorry. It's been a long week. Mark tried to fill the silence. We're working on that new project at the firm. The one I told you about. The Riverfront Plaza thing. It's a nightmare actually. The client keeps changing his mind about the windows. You wouldn't believe the permits we have to pull. Paul didn't engage. He pushed the food around his plate, cutting the pork into tiny, neat pieces but not eating them. He took a sip of water, then another. His hand was trembling slightly. Lily, who had been quiet, looked up at him. Uncle Paul, why aren't you eating? Mama made your favorite. He forced a smile. It was a hollow thing, a grimace that didn't reach his eyes. I'm not hungry, Lily. I had a big lunch. You always say that, she said, and she turned back to her own plate. I watched him. The lines around his mouth were deeper than I remembered. His shirt was wrinkled at the collar. I thought of the folder he'd brought, the way he'd held it against his side like it was a secret he wasn't ready to share. I tried to catch his eye, but he wouldn't meet my gaze. We finished dinner in that strained silence. The cake was brought out, and I blew out the candles. I made a wish, the same wish I always made, for health and happiness for the family, but my heart wasn't in it. When I opened my eyes, Paul was staring at his coffee cup. After dinner, Mark Clea read the dishes. Lily asked to be excused, and I helped her get ready for bed. I tucked her in, kissed her forehead, and told her I loved her. She was asleep within minutes, her small hand curled around the edge of her blanket. I stood in the doorway for a moment, watching her breathe, and I wished I could stay in that room forever, where the only conflicts were about which color block went on top. But I knew I couldn't. I went back downstairs. Paul was in the living room. He had moved to the A-room chair by the window, the one my father used to sit in. He was holding the folder in his lap, his thumbs pressed against the edges. Mark was in the kitchen, stacking the dishes in the dishwasher. The sound of running water was a distant, muffled noise. I sat on the sofa across from Paul. I didn't say anything. I just waited. He put his coffee cup down on the side table with a sharp click. The sound was too loud in the quiet room. He leaned forward, his elbows on his knees, and finally looked at me. His eyes were flat, tired, and behind them I saw something else. Something cold and calculating that I had never seen in my brother before. Megan, he said. I need to talk to you. It's about Dad's estate. My father had died 5 years ago. His estate was not a complicated one, a modest house on a small plot of land at the edge of town, and a few $1,000s in a savings account that we'd used to pay for his funeral. The house was the only real asset. It was a 2-bedroom bungalow with a cracked driveway and a weeping willow in the backyard. It was not worth much, not in dollars and cents. But to me, it was everything. It was the place I had grown up. It was the kitchen where my mother taught me to make that pork roast. It was the backyard where Paul and I had played catch until the streetlights came on. Dad had left the house to us jointly. Paul and me. 50-50. We had never talked about selling it. The understanding was always there, unspoken but solid. We would keep it, maybe fix it up, maybe use it as a weekend place. It was a safety net, a connection to a past we couldn't get back. I nodded. What about it? I've found a buyer, he said. The words hung in the air between us. I blinked. What do you mean, you found a buyer? A developer, he said. A company that's been buying up land on the edge of town. They're building a housing development. They want the whole block. They've offered 3 times what we could get on the open market. I shook my head. Paul, we talked about this. We're not selling the house. We're not. He laughed, a short, bitter sound. You're not selling the house. I'm trying to save my business. Your business, I repeated. Paul, I don't understand. We were going to buy you out. Mark and I talked to the bank. We can get a loan. We can pay your shari. We can keep the house. A loan, he said, and his voice was dripping with scorn. A loan to buy my shari. That's just a way for you to keep the house and make me the bad guy who took your money. That's not what I'm saying, I said, my voice rising. Paul, that's our home. It's Dad's house. You can't just sell it. I can, he said. I'm a co-owner. I've already signed a preliminary agreement with the developer. There's a penalty clause if I back out. A big one. I can't afford to walk away from this deal. I read at him. You signed something? Without even talking to me? Paul, we're supposed to be partners in this. We're supposed to be family, he shot back. And family is supposed to help family. Do you have any idea what I'm going through? My business is on the verge of collapse. I'm drowning in debt. I can't pay my rent. I can't pay my employees. And you're sitting here in your nice house with your nice husband and your nice little life, telling me I can't sell a run-down shack I never wanted to keep in the first place. Mark had come out of the kitchen. He was standing by the archway, a dish towel still in his hands. His face was pale. Paul, he said, his voice calm and measured, I think you need to calm down. We can work this out. We can find a solution. A solution? Paul stood up, kicking his chair back a few inches. The solution is right in front of you. Sign the papers. Take the money. Let me salvage something from the wreckage of my life. Is that too much to ask? Paul, sit down, I said. We can talk about this. We can figure something out. Just give us time to talk to the bank, to find a way to buy you out without you losing everything. He stood there, breathing harrowed. The folder was still in his hand. His knuckles were white. Time, he said. I don't have time. The closing is in 60 days. The developer is Greg's brother. Greg is my partner. This is a done deal. I'm not backing down, Megan. You can either sign the papers and get your shari, or you can be difficult and we can fight it out in court. But either way, I'm selling that house. I stood up too. My legs were shaking. Paul, listen to yourself. You're not making sense. This isn't you. This is just stress. Just tell me what you need. Tell me how to help you. You can help me by signing the papers, he said, his voice dropping to a NEAR whisper. That's how you can help me. He grabbed his jacket from the back of the chair. He didn't button it. He just held it in his hand, the same way he held the folder. He walked toward the front door. I followed him. Paul, wait. Please. We're family. We can fix this. We can fix anything if we just talk. He stopped at the door. His hand was on the handle. He didn't turn around. The developer is Greg's brother, he said again, and his voice was cold. I'm doing this to save my company. If you don't sign, you're not just hurting me. You're ruining my life. He opened the door. A gust of cold wind blew in, scattering a few dry leaves across the doorstep. The night air was sharp and bitter. He stepped out into the darkness. Without another word, the door clicked shut behind him. The sound was final, like a lock turning. I stood there, ring at the closed door. My chest was tight. I couldn't breathe. The warmth of the house felt suffocating. Mark came up behind me and put a hand on my shoulder. His touch was gentle, but it felt distant. He's just stressed, Megan, Mark said. It was a shock. He'll come around. I shook my head. I couldn't speak. Something in the way Paul had looked at me, that flicker of coldness in his eyes, had made me realize that this wasn't just about money. It wasn't just about debt or business. It was something deeper. Something he'd been holding onto for a long time, waiting for the right moment to let it out. I walked back into the living room. The candles on the table had burned down to small, melted puddles. The cake was untouched. The silver necklace felt heavy around my neck. The birthday dinner was over. And the conflict had only just begun. 3 weeks passed. The silence from Paul was louder than any argument. I called his phone every evening for the first week. Each call went to voicemail. I left messages, my voice refull and calm, saying I was worried, that I wanted to talk, that we didn't have to fight. He never called back. By the second week, I stopped calling. The silence became a wall between us, and I didn't know how to climb over it. I went about my days in a fog. I took Lily to school. I went to the grocery store. I had dinner. Mark, and I talked about the weather, about Lily's homework, about the leaking faucet in the upstairs bathroom. We didn't talk about Paul. Every time I brought him up, Mark would say the same thing. He just needs time. He'll come around. But I knew my brother. Paul was stubborn, but he was not cruel. He had never ignored me for more than a day. This silence was different. It was deliberate. It was a message. I sta route going to his office. Meridian Logistics was a small company, housed in a tired beige building in a business park on the south side of town. The parking lot was cracked and full of potholes. The sign above the door was faded, the letters peeling. I had been there once before, a year ago, when Paul had given me a tour. He'd been so proud of it then, showing me the new computers, the filing system he'd organized himself. That pride was gone now. The building felt different. It felt empty. The first time I went, the receptionist, a young woman with tired eyes, told me Paul was in a meeting. I sat in the waiting array for an hour, flipping through old magazines. He never came out. The receptionist apologized and said he must have left through the back. I didn't believe her. The second time, I called ahead. The receptionist said he was unavailable. I asked her to tell him I had stopped by. She said she would. The third time, I didn't call ahead. I just showed up. It was a Tuesday morning. The sky was gray and heavy, threatening rain. I parked my car in the lot and walked to the front door. The receptionist looked up as I entered, a flicker of recognition in her eyes. She sta route to speak, but I didn't stop. I walked past her desk and down the narrow hallway to RD Paul's office. His door was open. I could see him through the gap. He was sitting at his desk, his phone pressed to his ear. He was leaning back in his chair, his eyes closed, rubbing his forehead with his free hand. He looked exhausted. His shirt was untucked, and his hair was disheveled. He was talking in a low voice, too quiet for me to hear the words. I knocked on the doorframe. His eyes snapped open. He saw me, and his face went through a quick series of expressions: surprise, then annoyance, then something that looked almost like fear. He held up a finger, signaling me to wait, and finished his conversation. His voice was clipped, businesslike. He said goodbye and hung up without any warmth. Megan, he said. This is a surprise. He didn't stand up. He didn't offer me a seat. He just sat there, staring at me with tired, wary eyes. I'm not here to fight, Paul, I said. I closed the door behind me and sat in the chair across from his desk. I'm here to talk. We haven't talked in 3 weeks. Nothing to talk about, he said. You know where I stand. I told you what's going to happen. You told me you were going to sell the house, I said. You didn't tell me about your business. You didn't tell me how bad things really are. He looked away. It's none of your concern. It is my concern, I said. You're my brother. You're the only family I have left. Of course it's my concern. For a moment, his facade cracked. He rubbed his face with both hands, and when he looked up again, his eyes were red-rimmed. It's worse than you think, he said. We're hemorrhaging cash. Greg and I had a big deal fall through last month. A contract with a supermarket chain. We were counting on it. It was supposed to get us through the year. It fell through, and now we're scrambling to cover the losses. I've had to lay off 3 people. I can't pay my own rent. Why didn't you tell me? I asked. All those family dinners, all those holidays. You sat there like everything was fine. Because I was ashamed, he said. His voice was raw. You and Mark, you have it all figured out. You have your house, your daughter, your steady jobs. I'm the screw-up. The one who couldn't hold a steady job. The one who couldn't even handle his own divorce without you bailing him out. That's not true, I said. You're not a screw-up. You've just had bad luck. Bad luck, he repeated, and he laughed, a hollow, bitter sound. Is that what you call it? I've made bad decisions, Megan. That's what it is. And now I'm paying for them. He paused, his voice becoming bitter. And now you want to keep the house. A house I have no money to maintain. You think I want to sell it? That place is the only good memory I have. But I don't have a choice. There's always a choice, Paul, I said softly. We can help. Mark and I, we talked to the bank. We can get a loan to buy you out. We can pay you more than the market value if that's what it takes. He looked at me RPLY. Forget it. I'm not taking a handout from my big sister. He stood up and walked to the window, his back to me. You want to help me? Then help me by signing the papers. Greg's brother, M.A. Rutin, the developer, he's pushing this deal. It's the only thing that can save us. The advance payment will cover our debts and buy us time. I was about to respond when the door opened. A man walked in, tall and broad-shouldered, dressed in a RP expensive suit. He was about our age, with a confident smile and an easy manner. He had the look of a man who was used to being in RG. This was Greg, Paul's partner. He looked at me, then at Paul, his smile widening. You must be Megan, he said, extending his hand. Paul's told me so much about you. I'm Greg. I shook his hand. His grip was firm and dry, but his hand was cold. Nice to meet you, I said. Likewise, he said. He looked at Paul, a flicker of something passing between them. Am I interrupting something? No, Paul said quickly. My sister and I were just discussing some family business. Greg nodded, still smiling. Of course. Family business is important. He sat down in the chair next to me uninvited. Well, I just wanted to let you know, Paul, the final paperwork for the land deal is ready. We just need your sister's signature. He turned to me, his smile unwavering. I'm sure you want what's best for your brother. This is what's best for him. It's a great deal. Once it's done, the pressure is off. We can refocus on the business, grow it again. I looked at him. His smile was too smooth, his voice too practiced. He was a salesman, through and through. But there was something in his eyes, a glint of calculation, that made me uneasy. I'm not ready to sign anything yet, I said. I need more time to think about it. Greg's smile didn't falter, but his eyes hardened almost imperceptibly. Of course. Take all the time you need. But I should warn you, the market is volatile. The offer might not be on the table forever. I stood up. I understand. I'll be in touch. Paul stood up too. He walked me to the door, his hand on my elbow. His touch was gentle, but I could feel the tension in his fingers. Thanks for coming, Megan, he said. His voice was flat, but there was a pleading look in his eyes that I didn't fully understand. I left the office with a heavy heart. The cold air hit my face as I walked to my car, and I stood by the driver's side door for a moment, my hand on the handle, ring at the gray sky. Something didn't add up. Paul had always been impulsive, but he wasn't cruel. The man I'd seen in that office was a stranger. And Greg, with his easy smile and his cold eyes, was the one pulling the strings. That evening, I sat at the kitchen table with Mark. Lily was in bed. The house was quiet. I told him everything about Paul's debts, about the failed contract, about Greg. I told him about the feeling I had, the prickle of suspicion that wouldn't go away. Does that sound like Paul to you? I asked. Signing a deal without consulting me, that's not him. That's Greg. I think he's manipulating Paul. Mark was quiet for a long time. He poured himself a glass of water and sipped it slowly. People change, Megan, he said. Especially under pressure. Maybe you should just think about the offer. The money would be good for us too. We could pay off the mortgage on this place. We could put some away for Lily's college fund. I read at him. You're on his side, I'm not on anyone's side, he said calmly. I'm just trying to be practical. You have an older house that needs a new roof. We have a 6-year-old daughter. The money from the sale of your father's house could secure her future. It could secure our future. His words hit me like a slap. I felt the blood rush to my face. That house isn't just a piece of property, Mark. It's my childhood. It's my father. It's the only thing I have left of my family. I know that, he said, his voice gentle but firm. I know it's important to you. But is it worth losing your brother over? Is it worth all this stress? I'm not losing my brother, I said. Paul is the one who's losing himself. And I'm not going to let him. Mark sighed. He reached across the table and took my hand. I'm not trying to fight with you, Megan. I just want you to be happy. And right now, you're not happy. You're stressed, you're anxious, and you're fighting with your brother. If selling the house could make all of that go away, wouldn't it be worth it? I pulled my hand back. I can't believe you're saying this. You're supposed to be my partner. You're supposed to be on my side. I am on your side, he said. That's why I'm telling you the truth. Paul is desperate. Greg is a businessman. And you're caught in the middle. The easiest way out of this is to take the money and move on. I stood up. My chair scraped against the floor. I'm going to bed, I said. I can't talk about this right now. Megan, wait, but I was already walking up the stairs. I closed the bedroom door behind me and sat on the edge of the bed, my hands trembling. Mark didn't follow. I heard him moving around in the kitchen, the soft clatter of dishes, the click of the light being turned off. I lay down in the darkness, sta ring at the ceiling. The weight of the situation pressed down on me like a physical force. My brother, my husband, my father's house. They were all pulling me in different directions, and I didn't know how to hold on to any of them. The next morning, I made a decision. I couldn't trust Greg. I couldn't trust Paul's judgment. I had to find out the truth for myself. I dressed quickly, kissed Lily goodbye, and drove to the town hall. The public records office was in the basement of the municipal building. It was a dusty, fluorescent-lit room filled with filing cabinets and the faint smell of old paper. The clerk behind the counter was a young woman with glasses and a bored expression. I asked her for the records of Paul's company, Meridian Logistics. She typed something into her computer and pointed me to a row of microfilm machines. I spent an hour scrolling through documents. My eyes ached from the strain. I was about to give up when I found it. A contract for a large transportation job with a major supermarket chain. It was dated 6 months ago. The contract had been cancelled. The reason listed was a breach of contract. The breach was filed by a company called Caldwell Holdings. I wrote the name down on a scrap of paper. Caldwell Holdings. It sounded familiar, but I couldn't place it. I asked the clerk if she could find any information about Caldwell Holdings. She typed the name into her computer and pulled up a file. Caldwell Holdings was a subsidiary of a larger real estate firm. The same firm that was trying to buy my father's land. My hands root to shake. I sat back in my chair, sta ring at the screen. Paul's company had been sabotaged. The big deal that fell through was deliberately derailed by a company connected to the developer. And then, out of the blue, Greg's brother had swooped in to help by buying the land. It was a setup. A deliberate trap to force Paul to sell. I folded the paper and put it in my bag. I walked out of the town hall into the cold, gray afternoon. I felt a surge of anger, not just at Greg, but at Paul. How could he be so blind? He trusted his partner completely, and his partner was using him like a puppet. I got into my car and sat there for a long time, my hands gripping the steering wheel. I knew what I had to do. I had to go back to Paul. I had to show him the truth. I had to make him see that Greg was not his friend. He was his enemy. I root the engine and pulled out of the parking lot. The rain began to fall, soft at first, then harder. The wipers beat a steady rhythm against the windshield. I drove toward Paul's office, my mind racing. I didn't know what I was going to say. I only knew that I couldn't let Greg win. I couldn't let him take my father's house. And I couldn't let him destroy my brother. I didn't go straight to Paul's office. I drove home first, my hands still trembling on the steering wheel. The rain had turned into a steady downpour, blurring the world outside my windshield into smudges of gray and green. I needed to think. I needed to calm down before I saw him. If I walked in there with my emotions raw and my voice shaking, he would shut down. He would push me away again. I parked in the driveway and sat in the car for a few minutes, watching the rain streak down the glass. The house looked quiet. Mark was at work. Lily was at school. I had the place to myself. I went inside and made a cup of tea, but I didn't drink it. I just held the RM mug in my hands, sta ring at the wall, running through what I had found. Caldwell Holdings. The name echoed in my mind. I had seen it on the contract. I had seen it on the real estate firm's letterhead. It was the same company that was buying up land on the edge of town, the same company that wanted my father's house. And it was the same company that had sabotaged Paul's business. It was all connected. Greg and his brother Martin had set this up from the beginning. The anger I felt was cold and sharp. It wasn't the hot, impulsive anger that made you want to scream. It was the kind of anger that made you quiet, that made you think clearly, that made you see things you had been blind to before. I thought about all the family dinners, all the holidays, all the times Paul had sat across from me, smiling and laughing, while his business was crumbling around him. He had never told me. He had hidden it all, protecting his pride, and in doing so, he had made himself vulnerable to someone like Greg. I finished my tea and went upstairs to change. I put on a dry sweater and a pair of comfortable pants. I looked at myself in the mirror. My face was pale, my eyes tired. I looked older than 34. I looked like someone who had been carrying a heavy weight for too long. I drove to Paul's office again. The rain had let up slightly, but the sky was still dark and heavy. The parking lot was mostly empty. I parked at the front door and walked in. The receptionist looked up, surprised to see me again so soon. "He's in his office," she said before I could ask. Her voice was flat. "He's been there all morning." I walked down the hallway. Paul's door was half open. I could hear him talking on the phone again, his voice low and tense. I knocked on the doorframe, and he looked up. His face was drawn, his eyes shadowed with exhaustion. He saw me and hung up the phone without saying goodbye. "Megan," he said. "What are you doing here? I need to talk to you," I said. I closed the door behind me and sat down across from his desk. "I found something. Something you need to see." He looked worried. "What is it?" I pulled the paper out of my bag and laid it on his desk. "Do you remember the supermarket contract, the big deal that fell through?" He glanced at the paper, but didn't pick it up. "What about it?" "I went to the public records office," I said. I looked up the cancellation. The breach was filed by a company called Caldwell Holdings. He frowned. "Caldwell Holdings, I've never heard of them." "Neither had I said. "But I looked them up. They're a subsidiary of a large real estate firm. The same firm that Greg's brother works for." He read at me. The color drained from his face. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that Greg and his brother set this up," I said. "They sabotaged your business to make you desperate. Then Greg's brother came in with an offer to buy the land, knowing you would be desperate enough to take it. They've been playing you from the start." He shook his head slowly. "That doesn't make any sense. Greg is my partner. He's been my partner for 5 years. He wouldn't do that." "Paul, read the paper," I said. "It's right there." The cancellation was filed by Caldwell Holdings. It's the same company. There's no coincidence. He picked up the paper with trembling hands. He read it once, then again. His face went pale, then red. He put the paper down and covered his eyes with his hands. "I don't understand," he said. "Why would Greg do this for the land?" I said. "My father's house. It's a prime piece of property. They want to develop it. They knew you were the weak link, the one who was struggling. They targeted you." He let out a shaky breath. "I signed the initial papers," he said. "I signed a contract with Greg's brother. If I back out now, the penalty fee will bankrupt me. I'm trapped." I leaned four-way road. "We're not trapped," I said. "We have each other. We can fight this." "How?" he asked, his voice cracking. "Greg has all the power. He has the contract. He has the money. He has everything. I have nothing." "You have me," I said. "You have Mark. You have family. That's more than Greg has." He looked up at me. His eyes were wet. "I was so proud," he said. "I didn't want to ask for help. I wanted to fix it myself. I almost lost you, Megan. I almost lost the house because of my pride." "I know," I said. "But we're in this together now. We can figure out what to do." We sat in silence for a long time. The rain had root again, tapping against the window. Paul read at the paper on his desk, his hands clasped in front of him. I could see the hairs turning in his head. He was thinking, planning, trying to find a way out. "There's something else," I said. "When I was at the records office, I found something else. Greg has been taking kickbacks from a supplier. It's not related to the land deal, but it proves he's dishonest. We could use that." Paul looked up, his eyes sharpening. "Kickbacks from who?" "One of your vendors," I said. "A transportation company. He's been getting a percentage of the contracts they give you. It's not a lot, but it's enough to show a pattern. We could expose him." "Expose him," Paul repeated. "And then what? He'll just deny it." "Maybe," I said. But it would make him nervous. It would show him we're not going to just roll over. We need to fight back. Paul nodded slowly. You're right, he said. We need to fight back. But we need a plan. We can't just go in there yelling. We need to be SMART. Then let's be SMART, I said. Let's talk to a lawyer. Let's see what our options are. Paul looked at me, and for the first time in weeks, I saw a flicker of hope in his eyes. Okay, he said. Let's do it. We spent the rest of the afternoon at his office, combing through documents. We found the kickback records in a file Greg had forgotten to lock away. We found emails that hinted at a connection between Greg and his brother. We found notes about the land deal that showed Greg had been planning this for months. It was a mountain of evidence, all of it pointing to the same conclusion. By the time we finished, it was dark outside. The rain had stopped, leaving the streets wet and shiny under the streetlights. Paul and I sat in his office, surrounded by papers, exhausted but determined. What now? He asked. We go home, I said. We sleep. And tomorrow we take this to a lawyer. He nodded. Okay. I stood up to leave, but he reached out and grabbed my hand. Megan, he said. I'm sorry. For everything. For the way I treated you. For the things I said. I was SCA red, and I took it out on you. That wasn't fair. I know, I said. I forgive you. We're family. That's what family does. He let go of my hand, and I walked out of his office into the cold night air. The sky was clear now, the stars visible for the first time in days. I stood in the parking lot for a moment, looking up at them, feeling a strange sense of peace. We had a long way to go, but we were finally on the same side. When I got home, Mark was in the living room, reading a book. He looked up when I came in. Where have you been? He asked. I was worried. I was with Paul, I said. We found something important. I told him everything, about Caldwell Holdings, about the kickbacks, about Greg's scheme. He listened without interrupting, his face unreadable. When I finished, he set his book aside and looked at me. What are you going to do? He asked. We're going to fight back, I said. We're going to expose Greg and his brother. We're going to save the house. Mark was quiet for a moment. Megan, he said. I want you to think about this carefully. Greg is powerful. He has money, he has connections. If you go after him, he's going to fight back. He's going to do everything he can to destroy you and Paul. Are you ready for that? I'm not afraid of Greg, I said. I'm afraid of losing my brother. I'm afraid of losing my father's house. I'm afraid of letting them win. Mark stood up and walked over to me. He put his hands on my shoulders. I'm not trying to stop you, he said. I'm just trying to protect you. If you're going to do this, you need to be prepared for the worst. Greg isn't going to go down without a fight. I know, I said. But I have to try. I can't live with myself if I don't. He looked at me for a long moment, then nodded. Okay, he said. Then I'm with you. Whatever you need, I'll help. I leaned into him, resting my head on his chest. Thank you, I said. He kissed the top of my head. That's what family does, he said, echoing my words to Paul. The next morning, I called Paul. We agreed to meet at Mrs. Evelyn's office. She was a retired corporate attorney, an old friend of Mark's family. She was in her late 70s, saw RP's attack, and she had agreed to help us pro bono. We met her in a small conference room in her home office, a cozy space lined with bookshelves and potted plants. Mrs. Evelyn was a small woman with silver hair and bright, intelligent eyes. She wore a simple blouse and a pair of reading glasses perched on her nose. She listened to our story without interruption, taking occasional notes on a yellow legal pad. When we finished, she set down her pen and folded her hands on the table. You have a strong case, she said. The evidence you've gathered is compelling. But it's not airtight. Greg could claim the kickbacks were legitimate expenses. He could claim he didn't know about Caldwell Holdings. He could deny everything. So, what do we do? Paul asked. We need to gather more evidence, she said. We need something that ties Greg directly to the sabotage. An email, a phone call, a witness. Something that proves he was behind it. Paul looked at me. Do we have anything like that? I shook my head. Not yet. But maybe we can find something. Mrs. Evelyn nodded. In the meantime, I can draft a letter. A letter that outlines the evidence we have and threatens legal action. It might be enough to make Greg nervous. It might be enough to make him back down. Do it, I said. Send the letter. Let him know we're not going to let this go. Mrs. Evelyn smiled. That's the spirit. I'll have the letter ready by the end of the week. In the meantime, keep your eyes open. Look for anything that might help us. Paul and I left her office feeling hopeful. For the first time in weeks, we had a plan. We had a direction. We weren't just reacting anymore. We were fighting back. But as I drove home, I couldn't shake the feeling that Greg wasn't going to give up easily. He had too much to lose. And desperate people, I had Leonette, were the most dangerous of all. The letter went out on a Thursday. Mrs. Evelyn sent it by certified mail, so we knew when it arrived. Paul called me that afternoon, his voice tense. It's done. He got it. I saw him open it. Did he say anything? I asked. No. He just read it and put it in his desk drawer. He didn't even look at me. I felt a chill run down my spine. Greg wasn't reacting the way we had hoped. He wasn't panicking. He wasn't calling to negotiate. He was sitting on it, waiting. That was a man who was confident. A man who thought he had all the answers. I spent the rest of the day on edge. I couldn't focus on anything. I picked up Lily from school and made her a snack. I helped her with her homework. I made dinner. But my mind was somewhere else, running through Sheena Rios, trying to predict what Greg would do next. The call came that evening. I was in the kitchen, washing dishes, when my phone buzzed on the counter. I dried my hands and picked it up. The screen showed an unknown number. I answered anyway. Megan, the voice was smooth and familiar. Greg. I gripped the phone tighter. What do you want? I want to talk, he said. I think we need to sit down and have a conversation. You, me, and Paul. No lawyers. No letters. Just a conversation. I don't think there's anything to talk about, I said. Oh, I think there is, he said. I think you've gotten some bad information. I think you've been misled. I'd like to clear the air. I hesitated. Every instinct told me to say no. But a small voice in the back of my mind said this might be my chance. This might be an opportunity to see him face to face, to read his expressions, to understand what he was really after. Where? I asked. My office, he said. Tomorrow morning. 9 o'clock. Bring Paul. I'll think about it, I said. You do that, he said, and he hung up. I called Paul immediately. He answered on the first ring. Did you get a call from Greg? I asked. Yeah, he said. He wants to meet. I know. What do you think? I think it's a trap, he said. But I also think we don't have a choice. If we don't show up, he'll use it against us. He'll say we're not willing to negotiate. Then we show up, I said. But we go prepared. We don't let him push us around. The next morning, Paul and I drove to Greg's office together. The building was the same tired beige structure, but it felt different this time. It felt like enemy territory. We walked in through the front door, and the receptionist nodded us through without a word. Greg's office was at the end of the hall. It was larger than Paul's, with a big mahogany desk and leather chairs. Greg was sitting behind the desk, his hands folded in front of him. He was wearing a crisp white shirt and a silk tie. He looked like a man who was in control. Paul, Megan, he said, gesturing to the chairs in front of his desk. Please sit down. We sat. I kept my hands in my lap, my fingers clasped together to keep them from shaking. Paul sat stiffly beside me, his jaw clenched. Greg leaned back in his chair and studied us for a moment. I have to say, I was surprised by the letter, he said. I didn't expect you to go to a lawyer. We had to, I said. You left us no choice. Left you no choice, he laughed, a short, hollow sound. Megan, I gave you a choice. I gave you a generous offer. You chose to turn it down. Your offer was based on fraud, I said. You sabotaged Paul's business. You manipulated him into signing a contract he couldn't get out of. That's not a choice. That's coercion. Greg's smile faded. His eyes narrowed. You can't prove that, he said. Can't we? I pulled a folder out of my bag and laid it on his desk. We have the contract from the supermarket chain. We have the cancellation notice from Caldwell Holdings. We have emails between you and your brother discussing the land deal. We have records of the kickbacks you've been taking from suppliers. We have enough to take you to court and destroy your reputation. Greg looked at the folder but didn't open it. He read at me for a long moment, his face unreadable. Then he leaned four-way RD, his voice dropping to a NEAR whisper. You think you're clever, don't you? You think you've got me cornered. But you don't understand how this works. I have money. I have connections. I have lawyers who are better than yours. If you take me to court, I'll drag this out for IRS. I'll bankrupt you and Paul before we even get to a trial. Maybe, I said. But we're not going to court. We're going to the press. We're going to tell everyone about the kickbacks, about the sabotage, about how you and your brother tried to steal my father's house. We're going to make sure your name is mud in this town. No one will ever do business with you again. Greg's face went pale. He looked from me to Paul, his eyes rooting back and forth. For the first time, I saw a crack in his composure. He wasn't as confident as he pretended to be. He was red. What do you want? He asked, his voice tight. I want you to walk away, I said. Tear up the contract with your brother. Sell your share of the business back to Paul. Walk away from the land deal. And we'll never speak of this again. He laughed again, but this time it was strained. You're asking me to give up everything. My business, my money, my reputation. Why would I do that? Because if you don't, we'll destroy you, Paul said. He had been quiet until now, but his voice was steady and cold. I've known you for 5 years, Greg. I trusted you. I thought you were my friend. But you were just using me. And now it's my turn to fight back. Greg read at him. For a moment, I thought he was going to lose his temper. His face was red, his fists clenched on the desk. But then he took a deep breath and forced himself to relax. He was a good actor, I had to give him that. This is a mistake, he said. You're making a mistake. If you go through with this, you'll regret it. I don't think so, I said. We've already thought this through. We've already made our decision. Now it's your turn. Walk away, or we go public. The silence in the room was deafening. Greg looked at the folder on his desk, then at Paul, then at me. His jaw tightened. I could see the calculation happening in his eyes. He was weighing his options, trying to decide if he could call our bluff. Finally, he leaned back in his chair. Fine, he said. I'll give it some thought. But I'm not making any promises. That's not good enough, I said. We need an answer now. You'll get an answer by the end of the week, he said. That's all I can offer. I looked at Paul. He nodded slightly. Okay, I said. End of the week. But if you try anything, if you try to hurt us or our family, we'll go straight to the press. We won't wait. Greg nodded, his face a mask of politeness. Understood. Paul and I stood up to leave. As we walked to the door, Greg's voice stopped us. Megan, he said. One more thing. I turned around. What? Your husband, he said. Mark. I know him. We've met a few times at industry events. He seems like a good man. A practical man. You sure he's on Boa RD with all this? I felt a cold knot form in my stomach. What are you implying? Nothing, he said. Just asking. Family can be complicated. That's all. I didn't answer. I turned and walked out of the office, Paul close behind me. We didn't speak until we were in the car. He's trying to get inside your head, Paul said. Don't let him. I know, I said. But the knot in my stomach didn't go away. Greg knew how to find the cracks. He knew how to exploit them. And he had found one. That evening, I sat at the kitchen table, ring into space. Mark was in the living room, reading the newspaper. Lily was in bed. The house was quiet. Mark came into the kitchen and poured himself a glass of water. You look tired, he said. I am tired, I said. It's been a long day. He sat down across from me. Did the meeting with Greg go well? It went okay, I said. We made our demands. He said he'd think about it. That's good, Mark said. That's progress. Is it? I asked. I'm not sure. I feel like we're just waiting for the other shoe to drop. Mark reached across the table and took my hand. Whatever happens, we'll deal with it together. That's what we do. I looked at him, his kind eyes, his steady voice. I wanted to believe him. But Greg's words echoed in my mind. Is Mark on Boa RDA? Were you sure? I didn't know the answer. And that was the riest pa RT of all. The week dragged on. I went through the motions of my daily life, but I felt like I was walking through fog. I took Lily to school. I went to the grocery store. I had dinner. But I couldn't stop thinking about Greg, about the land, about the future. And I couldn't stop thinking about Mark, about his silence, about the look in his eyes when I talked about the house. On Thursday, I got a call from Mrs. Evelyn. He RD back from Greg's lawyer, she said. They want to negotiate. Negotiate, I repeated. What does that mean? It means they're willing to talk, she said. It means we've gotten their attention. I felt a surge of hope. Where? Tomorrow, at my office, she said. Bring Paul. We'll see what they have to say. The next morning, Paul and I met at Mrs. Evelyn's office. Greg's lawyer was there, a RP-eyed woman in a blue suit. Greg himself was not present. He had sent his representative, which I took as a sign of weakness. The negotiation lasted for hours. The lawyer argued that Greg had done nothing wrong. She argued that the land deal was legitimate. She argued that Paul had signed the contract willingly. But Mrs. Evelyn was relentless. She presented our evidence, point by point, dismantling each argument with quiet precision. By the end of the day, we had reached an agreement. Greg would tear up the contract with his brother. He would sell his share of the business back to Paul for a fair price. He would walk away from the land deal. In exchange, we would drop all legal action and agree to keep the matter private. Paul signed the papers with trembling hands. I watched him, my heart swelling with pride. He had come so far. He had fought so hard. And now, finally, he was free. After it was over, we stood in the parking lot, the late afternoon sun warm on our faces. Paul looked at me, his eyes wet. We did it, he said. We actually did it. We did it, I said. Together. He hugged me, a tight, fierce hug that reminded me of when we were children. Thank you, he whispered. I don't know what I would have done without you. You don't have to thank me, I said. You're my brother. I'll always be here for you. We drove home in silence, both of us exhausted but relieved. The battle was over. Greg was gone. The house was safe. But as I pulled into my driveway, I knew the war was far from won. There were still wounds to heal. There was still trust to rebuild. And I still had to find out where my husband stood. Victory, I was learning, was a complicated thing. It didn't arrive with a fanfare or a burst of light. It came quietly, in the form of signed papers and handshakes, and it left behind a strange, hollow feeling that I hadn't expected. We had won. Greg was gone. The land deal was dead. My father's house was safe. But the house felt different now. It felt like a prize I had fought for, not a home I had grown up in. The days after the negotiation passed in a blur. Paul came over for dinner one night, and we sat around the table like we used to. Lily told him about her school play. Mark talked about a new project at work. I served the braised pork, and Paul ate 3 helpings. He laughed at Lily's jokes. He helped Mark clear the dishes. It was like the old days, but it wasn't. There was a tension beneath the surface, a reefulness in the way we all spoke to each other. We were tiptoeing around the elephant in the room. After dinner, I walked Paul to the door. He put on his jacket and turned to me. Thank you again, he said. For everything. I don't know how to repay you. You don't have to repay me, I said. Just be my brother. That's all I want. He hugged me, and I felt the familiar RMTH of his arms. I will, he said. I promise. I watched him drive away, and I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. He was going to be okay. We were going to be okay. But as I closed the door and walked back into the living room, I saw Mark standing by the fireplace, sta ring at the empty grate. Everything all right, I asked. Fine, he said. But his voice was distant. He didn't turn around. I walked up behind him and put my hand on his back. Mark, what's wrong? He turned to face me. His expression was hard to read. I've been thinking, he said. About the house. About what we're going to do with it now. I felt a prickle of unease. What do you mean? I mean, we have it back, he said. But we still have the same problems. The roof needs replacing. The foundation is cracked. It's going to cost a fortune to fix up. And we still have our own mortgage to pay. What are you saying? I asked. Even though I already knew. I'm saying we should still consider selling it, he said. Maybe not to Greg's brother. But to someone else. We could put it on the market. Get a fair price. Use the money to pay off our debts. I read at him. The words felt like a betrayal. You can't be serious, I said. We just fought to keep that house. We just won. And now you want to sell it? I'm not trying to undermine what you did, he said. I'm proud of you. I'm proud of Paul. But we have to be practical. That house is a financial burden. It's going to drain us. It's not a burden, I said. It's my father's house. It's my family's history. You know what that place means to me. Yes, I do, he said. And I know what it's costing you. You've been stressed. You've been exhausted. You've been fighting with your brother. And now that it's over, you're still not happy. Happy, I repeated. I'm not fighting for happiness. I'm fighting for something that matters. Something that's bigger than money. He shook his head. Megan, I'm not trying to hurt you. I'm just trying to look out for our family. For Lily. For us. That house is a millstone around your neck. It's going to drag you down. I felt the anger rising in my chest. You don't get to decide that, I said. It's my house. My decision. Actually, it's our decision, he said, his voice rising. We're married. We have a life together. And I have a say in how we spend our money and our time. I've been patient. I've been supportive. But I can't keep watching you tear yourself apart over a pile of old wood and memories. The word hung in the air between us. Memories. He said it like it was a dirty word. I need some air, I said. I grabbed my coat and walked out the front door. The night air was cold and sharp. I walked to the end of the driveway and stood there, STA ring up at the STARS. My hands were shaking. My heart was pounding. I didn't know how to get through to him. He saw the house as a problem to be solved, a liability to be managed. He didn't understand that it was part of me, part of who I was. And I didn't know how to make him understand. I walked back inside after a few minutes. Mark was in the kitchen, washing dishes. He didn't turn around when I came in. I stood in the doorway, watching him. I can't sell the house, I said. Not right now. Not after everything we've been through. I need time to think. I need time to figure out what I want. He turned off the water and dried his hands. Okay, he said. Take all the time you need. I'm not going to push you. Thank you, I said. But even as I said it, I knew the conversation wasn't over. It was just paused. The next day, I went to see Paul. He was at his office, working on rebuilding his business. The place was still messy, but it had a different energy. There was a sense of purpose, of four-way momentum. Hey, he said, looking up from his computer. What's up? I need to talk to you, I said. I sat down in the chair across from his desk. It's about Mark. What about him? He wants to sell the house, I said. He's been wanting to sell it from the beginning. He just didn't say anything because he didn't want to upset me. Paul leaned back in his chair. I'm not surprised, he said. Mark is a practical guy. He's always been that way. I know, I said. But I can't do it. Not now. I need time. Then take time, he said. It's not like anyone's forcing you to make a decision right now. The house is yours. You can keep it as long as you want. Easy for you to say, I said. You don't have to live with Mark. You don't have to listen to him talk about the roof and the foundation and the mortgage. Paul laughed. No, I just have to live with myself. And believe me, that's not always easy. I smiled, despite myself. I'm serious, Paul. I don't know what to do. Here's what I think, he said. You need to talk to Mark. Really talk to him. Not just about the house, but about what it means to you. Help him understand. I've tried, I said. He doesn't get it. Then try again, he said. That's what marriage is, isn't it? A lot of trying. I left his office feeling no more certain than before. But I knew he was right. I needed to talk to Mark. I needed to find a way to bridge the gap between us. That evening, I waited until Lily was in bed, and then I sat down with Mark in the living room. He was reading a book, but he put it aside when he saw my face. Mark, I said. We need to talk about the house again. He sighed. Megan, I thought we agreed to give it time. I know, I said. But I can't stop thinking about it. I need to understand why you want to sell it so badly. He was quiet for a moment. Then he set his book aside and looked at me. It's not just the money, he said. It's the stress. The conflict. I've watched you fight with your brother. I've watched you fight with yourself. And I've watched it trupart. I don't want to see you like that anymore. I know it's been hard, I said. But that's not the house's fault. That was Greg's fault. Paul's fault. My fault. The house is just a house. It doesn't cause problems. It's not just the house, he said. It's what it represents. A past you can't let go of. A family you're still trying to hold together. But Megan, your father is gone. Your mother is gone. The house isn't going to bring them back. I felt TRS sting my eyes. I know that, I said. I'm not trying to bring them back. I'm just trying to hold on to something. Something real. Something that matters. I know, he said. And I love you for that. But you have to let go sometime. You have to move four-way road. I wiped my eyes. Maybe I don't want to move four-way RD, I said. Maybe I'm not ready. He reached out and took my hand. Then we'll wait, he said. I told you I'm not going to push you. We'll wait until you're ready. I looked at him, his kind eyes, his steady presence. I knew he was trying. I knew he loved me. But the chasm between us felt wider than ever. The next few weeks were road mark, and I drifted through our days like two ships passing in the night. We talked about Lily. We talked about the weather. We talked about dinner. But we didn't talk about the house. We didn't talk about the future. One evening, I went to see the house by myself. I hadn't been there since before the negotiation. I wanted to see it with fresh eyes, to decide if it was still worth fighting for. The house was exactly as I remembered it. The paint was peeling. The gutters were clogged. The RD was overgrown. But inside, it was the same as it had always been. The same creaky floorboard RDS. The same worn-out armchair. The same kitchen with the same chipped countertops. I walked through the rooms, touching the walls, running my fingers over the old photographs. I sat in my father's chair and closed my eyes. I could hear his voice in my mind, low and steady, reading from the newspaper. I could smell his pipe smoke, the faint, familiar scent that had always made me feel safe. I opened my eyes and looked around. The house was old and worn. It was a burden, just like Mark said. But it was also a gift. A gift from my father. A gift from my childhood. A gift I wasn't ready to let go of. I stayed there for hours, until the sun went down and the house grew dark. Then I locked up and drove home. The lights were on in the living room. Mark was waiting for me. Or where were you? He asked. I went to the house, I said. I needed to see it. He didn't say anything. He just nodded. I can't sell it, I said. Not yet. Maybe not ever. I know it doesn't make sense to you. But it's part of me. And I can't let it go. He looked at me for a long moment. Then he walked over and put his arms around me. Okay, he said. We'll keep it. I buried my face in his chest and cried. I cried for the house, for my father, for the RS I had lost. I cried for Mark, for the strain I had put on our marriage. And I cried for myself, because I was tired. So tired. But when I lifted my head, I felt a little lighter. I felt a little stronger. I didn't know what the future held. I didn't know if I would ever be able to let go. But I knew, for the first time in a long time, that I wasn't alone. Mark was with me. And that was enough. The weeks that followed were quiet. Too quiet. After the storm of the past months, the stillness felt unnatural, like the calm before another storm. But no storm came. Greg was gone from our lives. Paul's business was slowly recovering. The house was still standing, still ours, still waiting for a decision I wasn't ready to make. But the quiet gave me time to think. Too much time. I found myself replaying every conversation, every argument, every moment of tension. I thought about Mark's words, about how the house had become a wedge between us. I thought about Paul's desperation, his pride, his fear. I thought about my father, about what he would have wanted. And I realized, slowly and painfully, that I had been so focused on holding on to the past that I had almost lost the present. It was Lily who brought it all into focus. She came home from school one day with a drawing. It was a picture of our family, me, Mark, her, and Paul standing in front of a house. The house was squa and simple, with a triangle roof and a chimney with smoke curling out of it. She had colored the sky blue and the grass green, and she had written "My Family" at the top in wobbly letters. I hung it on the refrigerator, right next to her other masterpieces. But I couldn't stop looking at it. In her drawing, the house wasn't important. It was just a backdrop. The people were what mattered. The people were the family. That evening, I sat down with Mark after Lily was in bed. "I need to talk to you," I said. "About the house." He sighed. "Megan, we already talked about this. I said we'd keep it. I meant it." "I know," I said. "But I've been thinking. About what you said. About the burden. About the stress. And I think you might be right." He looked at me surprised. "What changed?" I looked at Lily's drawing, I said. "She drew our family. And the house was just a house. The family was everything. I've been so focused on holding on to my father's house that I forgot what really matters. The people. The relationships. The love." He didn't say anything. He just listened. "I talked to Paul today," I continued. "I told him I was thinking about selling it. He said he was okay with it. He said he'd been thinking the same thing." Mark's eyes widened. "Paul agreed. He was the one who fought so hard to keep it. He fought to keep it because he thought I wanted it," I said. "He was trying to protect me. But he's ready to let go. So am I." Mark reached across the table and took my hand. "Are you sure this is a big decision? I don't want you to regret it." "I'm sure," I said. "It's time to move four-way road. For all of us." He squeezed my hand. "Okay, then we'll sell it. Together." The decision felt like a weight lifting off my shoulders. It wasn't an easy decision. It wasn't a painless decision. But it was the right one. I could feel it in my bones. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of activity. We hired a real estate agent, a friendly woman named Roll who had grown up in the same neighborhood. She came to the house and walked through every room, taking notes and making suggestions. "Your father had good bones," she said, patting the wall in the living room. "This place has potential. With a few updates, we could get a great price." I didn't want to update anything. I wanted to sell it as it was, with all its imperfections and memories. But Roll convinced me that a fresh coat of paint and some minor repairs would make a big difference. So I hired a painter and a handyman, and I watched as my father's house slowly transformed into something new. It was strange, seeing the house change. The living room walls went from faded beige to a soft gray. The kitchen cabinets were repainted white. The bathroom fixtures were updated. It was still the same house, but it wasn't. It was becoming someone else's house. Someone else's home. Paul came over one afternoon to help me pack up the last of my father's things. We went through boxes in the attic, sorting through old photographs, letters, and knickknacks. It was a bittersweet task, revisiting the past, saying goodbye to the fragments of our childhood. "Remember this?" Paul asked, holding up a small, ceramic bird. It was a robin, its paint chipped and faded. "Mom's favorite," I said. "She kept it on the windowsill in the kitchen." He smiled. "I used to hide it in my pocket when I was little. I thought it was magic." I laughed. "You were always stealing things." "Only the important ones," he said. We packed up the bird along with the other mementos. Most of them we kept. A few we donated. The rest we threw away. It was a cleansing process, a way of letting go. The day of the open house arrived. I had been dreading it, but I knew it was necessary. I wanted to find a buyer who would love the house as much as I had. I wanted to know it was going to a good home. Roll had done her job well. The house looked beautiful. The new paint made it feel bright and airy. The RD had been cleaned up. The windows sparkled. I stood in the kitchen, looking around, and for a moment, I almost didn't recognize it. A young couple came through the open house. They were in their late 20s, with a toddler in a stroller and another baby on the way. The woman was pregnant, her belly round and full. The man was tall and lanky, with kind eyes and a nervous smile. They walked through every room, taking their time. The woman touched the walls. The man opened the closets. They discussed the layout, the RD, the schools in the array. And then, just before they left, the woman stopped in the living room and looked out the window. "I love it here," she said to her husband. I can see our kids playing in the backyard road. Her husband nodded. It's perfect. I watched them from the kitchen, my heart swelling. They were going to make this house a home. They were going to fill it with laughter and love. And that was enough. That was more than enough. They made an offer the next day. It was fair, not too high and not too low. We accepted it. The closing was set for a month later. The month passed quickly. There were inspections and appraisals and stacks of paperwork. But through it all, I felt a sense of peace. I was letting go, and it felt right. The day of the closing arrived. It was a crisp, sunny morning. Paul and I met at the lawyer's office, a small, windowless room with a long table and too many chairs. The young couple was there, along with their real estate agent and their lawyer. CA Roll was there, beaming with pride. We signed the papers. Page after page of legal jargon, each signature bringing me closer to the end. When it was over, the young woman, her name was S.A. Raw, came over and hugged me. Thank you, she said. We're going to take such good care of it. I know you will, I said. It's a good house. It's a happy house. She smiled, and I saw a glimmer of TRS in her eyes. We'll make sure it stays that way. Paul hugged me too. He didn't say anything. He didn't need to. We walked out of the building together, into the bright sunlight. The parking lot was full of cars. People were coming and going. Life was going on. Now what? Paul asked. Now we go home, I said. And we start over. He smiled. Sounds good. We got into our separate cars and drove away. I didn't look back at the building. I didn't need to. The past was behind me. The future was ahead. That evening, Mark and I sat on the back porch, watching the sunset. Lily was inside, playing with her dolls. The house was quiet. Are you okay? Mark asked. I'm fine, I said. Better than fine. It's over. It's finally over. He put his arm around me. I'm proud of you. You were so strong. I had to be, I said. There was no other choice. We sat in silence for a while, watching the colors fade from the sky. The STA route to APAR, one by one. I was thinking, I said. About the money. From the sale. What about it? I want to put some of it in a college fund for Lily, I said. And the rest, I want to invest. Use it for our retirement. So we don't have to worry. Mark nodded. That sounds like a good plan. I also want to give some to Paul, I said. To help him with the business. He won't take a handout, but maybe he'll accept a loan. Something with fair terms. That's generous of you, Mark said. It's not generosity, I said. It's family. That's what we do. We help each other. He kissed my forehead. You're a good person, Megan. I'm just trying to do the right thing, I said. We went inside a few minutes later. The house was warm and cozy. Lily had fallen asleep on the couch, her doll clutched in her arms. I picked her up and carried her to bed. As I tucked her in, I looked at her face. She was so peaceful, so innocent. She had no idea how much we had been through, how close we had come to losing everything. And I was grateful for that. I was grateful that she could still be a child, unburdened by the weight of the world. I kissed her forehead and whispered goodnight. Then I went back downstairs to Mark. The next day, I went to see Paul. He was at his office, looking over a new contract. His business was rooting to grow again. He had hired 2 new people. He was optimistic. Hey, he said, looking up. What's up? I have something for you, I said. I handed him a check. This is from the sale. It's your shari. He looked at it, his eyes widening. Megan, this is too much. It's exactly your shari, I said. 50-50. Just like Dad wanted. He shook his head. I don't deserve this. I almost ruined everything. You made a mistake, I said. We all make mistakes. What matters is that you learned from it. That you're moving 4-way road. He looked at me, his eyes wet. Thank you, he said. I don't know what to say. Say you'll come to dinner on Sunday, I said. Lily has been asking about you. He laughed. I'll be there. I hugged him, and I felt the familiar rmth of his arms. We were still family. We were still brothers and sisters. The house was gone, but we were still here. And that was the most important thing of all. The weeks passed. Life returned to a new normal. We had our routines, our rituals, our quiet moments of joy. The house was no longer a source of conflict. It was a memory, a distant echo of a past that we had finally let go. I still thought about it sometimes. I still missed it. But the ache was less sharp than it used to be. It was a dull, familiar pain, like an old scar that had healed. It was part of me, but it no longer defined me. I looked at Lily's drawing on the refrigerator. The house was still there, squa and simple, with the triangle roof and the chimney. But now, when I looked at it, I didn't see the house. I saw the people. The people were the family. The people were everything. And that, I realized, was the lesson I had needed to Leah RN. The house was never the answer. The answer was always in the people. In the love. In the connection. In the moments we read together. That was what mattered. That was what I would carry with me, long after the house was gone. The final meeting was set for a Thursday afternoon. The young couple, Sarah and David, had asked to meet us at the house one last time before they took possession. They wanted to ask a few questions about the garden, about the heating system, about the quirks of an old house that no manual could ever capture. I said yes without hesitation. It felt right to see it one more time, to say a proper goodbye. Paul met me in the driveway. He was early, as he always was now. The months since the closing had changed him. He stood straighter. His eyes were clearer. The business was stable, and he had found a new confidence that I hadn't seen in years. He was wearing a clean jacket and a smile that reached his eyes. Ready for this? He asked. Ready as I'll ever be, I said. We walked up the front path together. The door was open, and Sarah was inside, running her hand along the banister. David was in the kitchen, peering into the cabinets. They looked like they belonged here. They looked like they were already home. Sarah came to the door and greeted us with a warm smile. Thank you so much for coming, she said. We just had a few questions. We want to make sure we do right by this place. Ask away, Paul said. We know every creak and groan this house has. We spent the next hour walking through the rooms. Sarah asked about the garden, what grew well, what needed extra care. David asked about the furnace, about the water heater, about the electrical panel. I answered each question patiently, sharing the knowledge my father had passed down to me. In the living room, Sarah stopped in front of the fireplace. This is my favorite room, she said. I can already picture Christmas morning here. The tree in the corner. The stockings on the mantel. I smiled. We used to do the same thing. My father would build a fire and we'd open presents right there on the rug. That's exactly what I want, she said. A home where traditions are reborn. Paul and I exchanged a look. It was the same look we used to share as kids, a silent communication that needed no words. We both knew this house was in good hands. David came over and put his arm around Sarah. We're going to raise our children here, he said. We're going to watch them grow up in this yard, in these rooms. We're going to make memories that will last a lifetime. That's all we ever wanted, I said. For this house to be a home. We walked out to the backyard road. The willow tree was still there, its branches swaying gently in the breeze. Paul and I had played under that tree as children. We had climbed its branches, hidden in its shade, dreamed our childhood dreams beneath its leaves. This tree, Sarah said. Is it safe? We were thinking about maybe cutting it down. No, I said, the word coming out sharper than I intended. Don't cut it down. That tree has been here for 50 years. It's part of the house. It's part of the land. Sarah looked surprised. Oh, okay, we'll keep it. I took a breath. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to be abrupt. It's just, that tree is special. It's where I used to play with my brother. It's where my father used to read his newspaper on summer afternoons. It's part of the story. Sarah nodded. We'll keep it, she said again. We'll take care of it. We said our goodbyes on the front porch. Sarah hugged me, her pregnant belly pressing gently against mine. David shook Paul's hand. They thanked us again, profusely, and then they went back inside to their new home. Paul and I stood in the driveway, looking back at the house. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the road. The willow tree swayed in the breeze. The house stood quiet and still, waiting for its new family to fill it with laughter. You okay? Paul asked. I'm fine, I said. Better than fine. It feels right. He nodded. It does. We got into our cars and drove away. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. The house was no longer mine. It belonged to Sarah and David now. It belonged to their children. It belonged to the future. That evening, Mark and I had dinner alone. Lily was at a sleepover, and the house felt strangely quiet without her. We sat at the kitchen table, eating leftovers, talking about nothing in particular. I talked to Sarah today, I said. The new owner. She's going to keep the willow tree. Mark smiled. That's good. I know how much that tree means to you. It does, I said. But I realized something today. It's not the tree that matters. It's what the tree represents. It's the memories. The moments. The people. He reached across the table and took my hand. That's a good way to look at it. I've been thinking about that a lot lately, I said. About what really matters. I spent so much time fighting for a house, for a piece of land. But that was never the point. The point was always the family. He squeezed my hand. I know. And I'm sorry if I didn't always see that. I was so focused on the practical stuff. The money. The burden. I forgot that sometimes, the things that don't make sense are the things that matter most. You were trying to protect us, I said. I know that. And I love you for it. We sat in silence for a while, holding hands. The kitchen was warm and cozy. The dishes were done. The day was done. It was a quiet, ordinary evening, and it was perfect. A few days later, Paul came over for dinner. He brought a bottle of wine and a bag of groceries. I'm king tonight, he announced. You and Mark are going to sit back and relax. Paul, you don't have to, Don't argue, he said. I want to. It's the least I can do. He took over the kitchen with a confidence I hadn't seen in years. He chopped vegetables, stirred pots, tasted sauces. He moved with a fluid grace that reminded me of our father. It was a small thing, but it was everything. Mark and I sat in the living room, listening to the sounds of King. Lily was at the table, doing her homework. The house was full of warmth and activity. Your brother's changed, Mark said. He has, I said. He's finally found his footing. It's good to see, Mark said. It's good to see all of us in a better place. I nodded. It's been a long road. But we made it. Dinner was delicious. Paul had made a roast chicken with vegetables, and he served it with a simple salad and crusty bread. We ate at the dining room table, the good china in use, the candles flickering softly. This is nice, Lily said. I like when Uncle Paul seeks. Me too, I said. I could get used to this. Paul smiled. I might have to make it a regular thing. After dinner, we had coffee in the living room. Paul and Mark talked about business. Lily showed me her homework. The evening was ordinary and perfect. When Paul left, I walked him to the door. He put on his jacket and turned to me. I wanted to tell you something, he said. Something I've been meaning to say for a while. What is it? I'm sorry, he said. For everything. For the way I acted. For the things I said. For almost losing you. I was so focused on my own problems that I forgot about everyone else. I forgot about family. You don't have to apologize, I said. We all made mistakes. I know, he said. But I want you to know that I'm grateful. Grateful for your forgiveness. Grateful for your help. Grateful that you never gave up on me. I hugged him. You're my brother, I said. I'll never give up on you. That's not how family works. He hugged me back, tight and fierce. I love you, Megan. I love you too, Paul. He drove away, and I watched his taillights disappear down the street. Then I went back inside, to the warmth of my home, to the love of my family. The weeks turned into months. Life settled into a new rhythm. Paul's business continued to grow. Mark's project at the architecture firm was finished, and he was proud of the result. Lily root second grade, and she came home every day with new stories to tell. The house was gone, but it wasn't forgotten. Sometimes, on quiet afternoons, I would think about it. I would remember the willow tree, the creaky floorboards, the kitchen where my mother taught me to CK. But the memories were no longer painful. They were just memories. A party of my past that I could CARY with me without being weighed down. One Sunday, we had a family dinner at our house. Paul came, of course. He brought a new friend, a woman named Diane who worked at the same logistics company. She was kind and funny, and she made Paul laugh in a way I hadn't heard in years. Lily was thrilled. She sat next to Diane and told her all about her school, her friends, her pet hamster. Diane listened with genuine interest, asking questions and laughing at Lily's jokes. After dinner, we sat in the living room. Paul and Diane were on the sofa, talking quietly. Mark was in the armchair, reading a book. Lily was on the floor, playing with her blocks. I stood in the doorway, watching them all. The scene was so ordinary, so simple, so perfect. It was the kind of moment that usually goes unnoticed, the kind of moment that is easily forgotten. But I held on to it. I held on to the warmth, the connection, the love. Mark looked up and caught my eye. He smiled. Everything okay, everything's perfect, I said. I walked over and sat on the arm of his chair. He put his arm around me, and we watched our family together. Paul and Diane were laughing at something Lily had said. The blocks were stacked high, a wobbly tower of red and blue. I closed my eyes for a moment and breathed it all in. The house was gone. The land was sold. But we were still here. We were still family. And that was the only thing that had ever mattered. The twist ending, I realized, was that there was no twist. There was no dramatic revelation, no sudden reversal of fortune. There was just life. Ordinary, messy, beautiful life. We had survived the betrayal. We had weathered the storm. And we had come out the other side, not unscathed, but stronger. More honest. More connected. I opened my eyes and looked at the people I loved. Mark, my steady, patient husband. Paul, my brother, finally at peace with himself. Lily, my daughter, full of wonder and joy. And Diane, a new face, a new beginning. This was my family. This was my home. Not a house, not a piece of land, but the people who filled my heart. The people who made my life worth living. And I knew, with absolute certainty, that I would never let them go. Not again. Not ever. I stood at the kitchen window, watching the last of the autumn leaves fall from the maple tree in the backyard. The sky was a pale, watery blue, and the air had that crisp, clean smell that only comes in late October. Inside, the house was warm and full of the scent of cinnamon and apples. I was baking a pie, my mother's recipe, the one she used to make every Sunday. Mark came up behind me and wrapped his arms around my waist. Smells good, he said. It's almost done, I said. Paul and Diane will be here in an hour. Good, he said. It's been too long since we've all been together. I leaned back against him, feeling the steady beat of his heart against my shoulder. The past hour had been a journey, a long and winding road that had tested us in ways I never could have imagined. But we had made it. We were still standing. We were still together. The doorbell rang. Lily ran to answer it, her footsteps thundering down the hallway. I heard her shriek with joy as she flung open the door. Uncle Paul. Aunt Diane. I smiled and wiped my hands on my apron. Mark and I walked to the front door together. Paul stood on the doorstep, his arm around Diane. He was wearing a new jacket, and he looked happy. Truly happy. Hey, sis, he said. Hey yourself, I said. I hugged him, then Diane, then ushered them inside. We sat down to dinner a few minutes later. The table was laden with food, the pie, a roast chicken, mashed potatoes, green beans. It was a feast, a celebration of everything we had been through and everything we had become. As we ate, we talked. We laughed. We read stories and memories and dreams for the future. Lily told us about her school play. Diane told us about her new job. Paul told us about a new contract he had just signed. Mark talked about a vacation he wanted to plan. And I sat there, listening, watching, feeling the warmth of the moment wash over me. This was my family. This was my home. Not the house, not the land, but the people. The people who had fought alongside me, who had stood by me, who had loved me through it all. After dinner, we moved to the living room. The fire was crackling in the fireplace. Lily was on the floor, playing with her blocks. Diane was showing Paul something on her phone. Mark was reading the newspaper. I sat in my father's chair, not the one from the old house, but a new one, a chair I had bought for myself. It was comfortable and sturdy, and it held me the way I needed to be held. I looked around the room and smiled. The story was over. The conflict was resolved. The ending was not dramatic, not sudden, not shocking. It was quiet. It was ordinary. It was real. And that, I realized, was the best ending of all.